Good morning. I was really struck by the readings this morning because even though I didn't choose them or wasn't informed of them, they're perfect for the topic. The theme of the month is gratitude, and the theme of my talk is heart and mind. And I'm going to talk about heart and mind from the point of view of a Chinese spiritual practice called Taoism. You'll often see it spelled T-A-O, therefore you may say Tao, but it's always pronounced Tao. And in the practice of Taoism, the two parts of the reading that we just heard, that the pure in heart shall see God, and that you are the light of the world, and in order to be the light of the world, you need to keep your wick trimmed. These indeed are actual characteristics of the practice of Taoism. Taoism is an ancient practice, probably first appeared in written form about 600 BC. And it first is said to have really been clearly presented by Lao Tzu, who wrote the book, the Tao Te Ching. And it is an amazing set of 81 verses that became the foundation of a major religious tradition that exists to this day. But what I want to talk about is the Chinese point of view about mind and heart first. There's only one word, one character, one concept for heart and mind. In other words, there aren't two words like we have to describe this that we call, the Chinese call, heart-mind. So there's no separation of heart and mind from the Chinese point of view. And as is often the case with other cultures, for us at least, it's very hard to understand what it is that's being pointed to by this insistence that heart and mind are the same thing. And what is being pointed to is that there is a consciousness, and that in pure consciousness alone, the one that you are hearing this talk with right now, in that consciousness, there's both what you call mind, with ideas and thoughts and beliefs, and there's heart, with love, emotion, appreciation. And that they are, in fact, two sides of the same thing. Taoism is this very interesting practice because it's kind of like, you know those ink blot tests? You've ever seen those? Just a blot of ink. And then you put onto it what you think it is? That's Taoism. You just decide for yourself what it's actually talking about. And I'm going to attempt to talk a bit about it today. It's a vast subject. But what's so really great about Taoism, and I think it was Sue, Reverend Sue was telling me about being on Mount Shasta and realizing how Taoism is so simple and clear. It says wonderful things, like I'm sure you've heard these, which is, this is a Taoist statement. Those who know do not speak. Those who speak do not know. Now, we all kind of feel like, oh, that confirms something for me, you know? I've heard so much from people about so many things, and I'm really not clear what they're doing. But you know, excuse me, sorry. This is really, Taoism just kind of leaps out with these crazy statements, and you wonder what's going on. So here's a statement by the way, my major text for studying Taoism is Taoism for Dummies. It's an excellent book, by the way, excellent book. However, Taoism for the complete idiot is not. So you know those series, Dummies and Idiots? Well, idiots are no good, dummies are good. So this is a statement by the writer of Tao for Dummies, who's actually a professor of religion. He said, there's no problem anywhere, ethical, social, governmental, or whatever, that's so big that it can't be solved by doing absolutely nothing. Let me say that again. There's no problem so big in any realm, government, society, personal, that's so big that it can't be solved by doing absolutely nothing. Now, wouldn't it be great if that were so? That's actually what Taoism points to again and again and again. In fact, it keeps on talking about you need to step back from everything you thought you needed to do or to be so that you can actually find out what's going on, simply put. So there's another way of saying what I just said. This is from Lao Tzu. Doing nothing is better than being busy doing nothing. So Taoism says, we really want you to begin to understand the power of doing nothing. The power of non-action, as it's often called. And I'll return to this topic in a moment. But this idea now that you're not here to do something, but you're here to be something. This is what Taoism keeps pointing to. And it says, because you're no longer attempting to do anything, you are to take the attitude in your life that all of this world, all of being itself, that you are to rest on it and let it carry you like a child being carried in its mother's arms. This is the heart, the teaching of Taoism. It's pointing to a world and a way of being that is one that is where you rest, where you are actually able to let go of all of the agendas and the ideas about what you should be so that you can find out what you really are, what's really going on. You could say that the way that Taoism works is kind of like this. Alan Watts said it this way. This transformation of consciousness that is undertaken in Taoism and in Zen Buddhism is more like the correction of faulty perception or the curing of a disease. It is not an acquisitive process of learning more and more facts or greater and greater skills, but rather an unlearning of wrong habits and opinions. As Lao Tzu said, in the pursuit of knowledge, every day something is added. In the pursuit of enlightenment, every day something is dropped. Taoism is about dropping everything that you have thought, everything that you have believed, every opinion that you have, every way that you lean in one direction or another, so that you can begin to have the consciousness which is open to what's in front of you instead of while you're thinking about something else. You know, we say in this teaching that God, and by the way, I'm going to use God and Tao as the same for the moment, is here right now. God has always been right where you are at every moment in your life. But what happens is that God is here, love is here, and then somebody walks into the room and then says something mean about someone you love. And suddenly you're off thinking about that. Or they talk about your mother, or they talk about something else. And your attention has gone somewhere else. And all the while, God is here. I'd like you to use this talk as a laboratory. That is, I would like you, while we're here together, for you to just allow that God is here, that the Tao is acting for and as you. It's going on right now, and that your attention now is not going to be distracted by thoughts of other places, times, relationships. And you're going to turn right now and say, God is here. Tao is here. I want to know it first and foremost. And I might suggest a practice for this. Notice that there is a silence within you right now. A place which is quiet. A place which is before your thoughts. And just notice when you are tempted to go away from the silence and come back to it. Just that brief description. We're interested in knowing what's here right now. And Taoism says the way to do that is to drop everything. They say that when you drop your ideas, opinions, beliefs about yourself, about the world, etc., that suddenly it, the world, the Tao, appears as it really is. So we learn in Taoism to contact reality by releasing our ideas and thoughts. Taoism calls it returning to the source. And returning is also described as a process that is not done by simply dropping. You have to train yourself. And this is what you have to train yourself to do. You have to train yourself to forget everything you know. And this is a training. So we have to recognize when opinions and beliefs are taking up our mind, and then just drop them. We're not there to counter them, to say they're wrong or right. We're here to allow them and move beyond them. We're not interested in what causes them. We're interested in not energizing these thoughts and beliefs and opinions. Why do we do this? Because according to Taoism, the way things are, what we call the law, by the way, in science of mind, has a structure to it. And it's called the Tao. And this is how it goes. This is from the Tao Te Ching. There was something formless and perfect before the universe was born. It is serene, empty, solitary, unchanging, infinite, eternally present. It is the mother of the universe. For lack of a better name, I call it the Tao. It flows through all things, inside and outside, and it returns to the origin of all things. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. That which is unnameable is the eternally real. Taoism is the kind of spiritual practice that is in accord with science of mind, is in accord with Buddhism, is in accord with Islam in saying this: there is one being. There is one source. There is only one. And in Taoism, it's called the Tao. Ernest Holmes said it this way when he spoke of what I'm calling the Tao. There is one and not two. Never forget that. Anywhere in the universe, just one. That one life is the substance of everything. It is one in unity, but multiple in manifestation. It is one substance from which an infinite variety of different things come, but every one of those things is made out of the one thing. One thing. One substance from which an infinite variety of different things come. That's what the Tao is. The Tao is that one that gives rise to, in Chinese, they say the 10,000 things. 10,000 means infinite number. So we're talking about this source, this unnameable source. And we're saying that this is what we want to connect to. This is what we want to pay attention to. This is what we want to be in accord with. My Zen teacher said it this way: I discovered that it is necessary, absolutely necessary, to believe in nothing. That is, we have to believe in something which has no form and color, something which exists before all forms and colors appear. But I do not mean voidness. There is something, but that something is something which is always prepared to take some particular form, and it has rules or theory or truth in its activity. This is called Buddha nature, or Buddha himself. It is one existence which has no form or color, and it's always ready to take form and color. He goes on, this is not just theory. This is not just the teaching of Buddhism. This is the absolutely necessary understanding of our life. There is one source that gives rise to everything that you see, have ever encountered, to everyone and everything in this room. Science says the same thing in its search for that underlying field of reality that gives rise to the atoms and subatomic particles and so forth. They're looking for one field. This is what we mean, as I said, when we talk about the law in Science of Mind. It is the structure and the nature of how things actually are. The universe is one, yet it's continuously producing new form, infinitely. The Tao is the name of this one. The Tao is always moving and changing. And it is the destiny of humans, it is our work, to become immortal. This is the Chinese way of saying being enlightened, because they don't actually mean living forever. What they actually mean is that you are to find that place, the reality of you that never dies. And Taoism approached this from many different ways, but the idea of immortality was that you are to let go of anything that changes, that is not permanently you, and just be that which doesn't change. And that's the Tao. The kind of Taoism I'm talking about here, by the way, if you were to go to China now, you would see that Taoism, even under communism, is practiced everywhere. Except what you would see there is prayers for the dead, rites for world peace. You'd see talismans to ward off dangers. You'd see practices for immortality. All of these practices of Chinese culture came in under the label of Taoism. Yet all of these practices refer back to this original book, the Tao Te Ching. So it seems like the statement by a contemporary of scholar about Taoism is actually true. She said, whoever calls themselves a Taoist is a Taoist. So I hereby ordain you. If I were to go to the heart of what has been coming up for me, It's that Taoism is asking us to pay attention to the qualities of our being that do not have to do with what we do or say. Taoism is pointing to what we are before we even begin to perceive anything. It's about a state of mind, a way of being. It's about what you are when you are acting in accord with the Tao, with the way things really are. When we do treatment, which is our form of prayer in this teaching, what we're saying to ourselves is basically, I want to be in alignment with, I want to be in accord with the way things actually are, with the God that is here. And that's the whole idea behind Taoism. When you read the Tao Te Ching, by the way, it's online. You can find many copies of it. There's 45 translations of it. It's a very, very popular book. And the statements in it, there's 81 small chapters. They're not chapters, they're verses mostly. I encourage you to just look it up and start to use it. But as one Taoist teacher said, don't try to understand it by juggling the words and meanings, but understand it intuitively through your heart and spirit. Ernest Holmes said this too. He said that when you go deeply into your own nature, you'll find that God speaks in a language more subtle than human language, without a tongue, in that universal language of spiritual emotion, which is instinctive in humanity. All civilizations, all people who have ever lived, have this same language, the universal language of emotion, sense, feeling, intuition, and instinct. It makes no difference what we call it. It's a direct revelation of omniscience through us. Omniscience means all-knowing. In Science of Mind, we teach that intuition, that wordless, often silent turning to knowledge within, is God speaking to us. And that is exactly the same teaching that Taoism attempts to bring us to. And what it says is, the way to this is not by gaining more knowledge about it, but by dropping every idea you ever had about it and about yourself and about the world. Taoism trains us to invite intuition through silence, by paying attention to the silence I mentioned at the beginning of this talk. Silence, as one writer wrote, is not simply the absence of sound waves. It's about being concerned with attention and awareness. Silence and awareness are in fact one thing. For silence has no opposite. Its embrace is wide and generous enough to receive all, both sound and the absence of sound. The practice of contemplation gradually reveals the silent presence flowing through the mind and flowing through the mud and reeds and rushes of both noise and sound. The measure of our ability to live in silence is our reaction to noise, whether external or internal, and not the length of time we go without hearing anything or hearing only what we like to hear. As contemplative practice matures, we begin to relate to disruptive noise differently. Going into this internal silence, the silence in which thinking is no longer the focus of your attention, in which words and thoughts and ideas have no meaning for you. This is the birthplace. This is the place that intuition, that the Tao appears. I'd like to do a little exercise with you, and I'm going to switch traditions, but it's such a beautiful phrase to use. But I'm going to do a little meditation with you. And it's based on that wonderful phrase from the Bible, "Be still and know that I am God." And you'll see what I do as we just sit together, just briefly. And you listen, being aware of the silence, being aware of what's distracting for you from the silence, coming back to the silence. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I. Be still and know that. Be still and know. Be still and. Be still. Be. And in this state of silence, you can hear these words from the Tao Te Ching as we end. There is no need to run outside for better seeing, nor to peer from a window. Rather, abide at the center of your being. The more you leave it, the less you learn. Search your heart and see. For if she is wise who takes each turn, the way to do is to be. So it is in this awareness that I now close with a treatment. We are now, in this moment, in the presence of the Divine One that we call God or Spirit, that is called in Taoism the Tao. It is our home. It is our resting place. It does everything. And we are the place in which it knows and lives and loves its life. I accept for every person here and for everyone touched by this talk the awareness that right now each one is supported by completely that Divine One, that source from which all things come eternally, and everything is done through and by it. I'm grateful for this awareness, and I'm grateful for this understanding that as we let go, we let God in to our awareness. I'm grateful for Taoism. I'm grateful for this community. I'm grateful for this opportunity to give our attention to that which is real. And I release this word now, knowing that it is active in each one, perfectly heard and understood. And I just let it be. And so it is. Got to turn, oops. Now I'm on. All right. Whew. Okay. So you know how it is when you come to a place and you don't know much about it, and you're learning about it, and everything kind of falls into place. Things that are said or that happen coincidentally turn out to be related to why you're there. So that's happening here as we speak. So I just want to note that the last song was Dona Nobis Pacem, which is Give Us Peace. And my topic today is actually all about peace, stillness, and silence. And so the reading, too, was very interesting. It says that the pure in heart shall see God, and that you are the light of the world, and that what you have to do is basically pay attention to that which is moving in your heart. And that which moves in your heart will open you to seeing God, or as we might say it here, opening you to see what is actually here. Because we teach that there is nothing but God. There is one being. It's called God, it's called Spirit, or in terms of my talk today, we're going to call it the Tao. The Tao is a Chinese word that means the way. But it also has been applied to a spiritual movement, which is called Taoism. And just a little grammatical note here. You'll often see it spelled T-A-O, but actually it's always pronounced Tao, D-A-O. So, Taoism is this amazing teaching which does say this, that when you get to the purity of what you are, you will see what is. And not until you do, will you. In other words, we're living in an illusion. You've probably heard this before. But the illusion isn't somehow out there that we are perceiving it. The illusion is that we are, in fact, projecting onto this reality something that isn't there. And so Taoism is about how do we get to that reality. Alan Watts, one of my favorite teachers, said this way. He said there's a transformation of consciousness that is undertaken in Taoism and in Zen Buddhism. They're closely related, by the way. It's more like the correction of a faulty perception or the curing of a disease. It's not an acquisitive process of learning more and more facts or greater and greater skills, but rather an unlearning of wrong habits and opinions. As Lao Tzu, the founder, said, in the pursuit of knowledge, every day something is added. In the pursuit of enlightenment, every day something is dropped. So this is another kind of spiritual path, similar in many ways to ours of Science of Mind, but it takes a different route to get to reality. It says that, in fact, the Chinese and Japanese way of speaking about mind is actually, there's one word, and it means both heart and mind. They are not separated in Chinese and Japanese thought. So if we're talking about mind, or what we know, or what is, we're talking about mind and heart at the same time. This heart part that Taoism talks about is presented in striking language in a book. The first book that is identified with Taoism is called the Tao Te Ching. And it's written by a mythical author called Lao Tzu. And in it, he says many powerful things, but one of the things that I want to point to right now is that he said this. He said that the Tao is not something that you can seek and gain by giving intention to do that. He basically said that what you have to do in order to understand the Tao is unlearn everything you've ever learned. Not a hard agenda, I'm sure. So Taoism has this wonderful capacity of speaking directly to you, and it does so, it has something for every age, as I was just thinking about this. So for adults, it says, first of all, the way to get to reality is to give up all your agendas, all those to-do lists, etc., that you measure your productivity with. Taoism says, drop it, okay? For kids still in school, Taoism says, you know what you have to do is unlearn everything. That's a good one. And for adults, for seniors, it's like this. The main meditation of practice in Taoism is called sitting and forgetting. So, and in fact, the workshop I'm going to do this afternoon is about that practice of sitting and forgetting, and the rather elaborate instructions given on how to do that. Okay, so Taoism really is about the state of mind, the way of being that we need to have in order to understand and to know reality. And it says the way to getting to that is not to study further, not to have the right thoughts. It's indeed to unlearn, to forget, to release agendas, to not have ideas, opinions, or beliefs that you rely on about anything. And so the whole practice goes this way. You know, in Science of Mind, we look for hidden beliefs. We look for those beliefs which are, if you will, tripping us up. And we change them consciously. Taoism has a different approach. It says, don't try to change your beliefs. Just stop relying on any belief. Taoism is interested in that state of mind that happens before you perceive or think anything. There is a you, which is prior to thinking, perception, identity. And Taoism says you need to go back to that way of being so that you can get in contact with what is actually here. As Alan Watts said, we project onto reality. The way we get out of it, according to Taoism, is to release those ideas. You need to be able to recognize your ideas and opinions, but you don't go around dismantling them. You don't try to believe something else. You just stop relying on belief and turning to the Tao. So what is the Tao? We, in this tradition, Science of Mind, are in the tradition of mystics throughout all religious traditions, which says this, that reality is better understood as one thing rather than many. That if you want to know what's actually going on right now, anywhere, here, that in fact, it's better to understand that there's one being that has all of these expressions of itself. And until you start to look that way, you won't see what's going on. This idea that there is one reality from which everything comes, everything is an activity of, that actually is a description of the Tao. The Tao is the Chinese name for that reality that gives rise to everything. In Chinese, they call it the 10,000 things. And the 10,000 things means infinity, the infinite number of things. So Taoism, like Science of Mind, says there is something from which everything arises, and that is called the Tao. Ernest Holmes, the founder of Science of Mind, emphasized it in this way. In one of many ways, he's done it many times, but here's one. He says, there's one and not two. Never forget that. Anywhere in the universe, just one. That one life is the substance of everything. It is one in unity, but multiple in manifestation. It is one substance from which an infinite variety of different things come. But every one of those things is made out of the one thing. My Zen teacher, Suzuki Roshi, emphasized the importance of this teaching in this way. He said, I discovered that it is necessary, absolutely necessary, to believe in nothing. That is, we have to believe in something which has no form and color, something which exists before all forms and colors appear. But I do not mean voidness. There is something, but that something is something which is always prepared to take some particular form, and it has some rules or theory or truth in its activity. This is called Buddha nature, or Buddha himself. It is one existence which has no form and color, and it is always ready to take form and color. This is not just theory. This is not just the teaching of Buddhism. This is the absolutely necessary understanding of our life. This is the absolutely necessary understanding of life if one is to know what really is. Science, too, seeks to find this one reality. It's constantly looking for that one grand theory of everything, the grand unified theory, if you know it. These teachings want to get back to that one. And that one is continually giving rise to everything. It's always moving and changing. But it's how it does it that we're interested in, and that it is doing it. In Science of Mind, we talk about the law. And for those of you who've studied some of our teaching here, the law really is a description of the way the universe actually operates. How it is structured, what it does, and what it doesn't do. The Tao is the Chinese description of that. The Tao is referring to that structure of the way things are. That indeed is what is moving in everything. Everything that moves is it. So the Tao is described like this. Excuse me, I've got to redo my notes a moment. There was something formless and perfect before the universe was born. It is serene, empty, solitary, unchanging, infinite, eternally present. It is the mother of the universe. For lack of a better name, I call it the Tao. It flows through all things, inside and outside, and returns to the origin of all things. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. Taoism is speaking to us right now in this room. There is a you that is knowing and experiencing what's happening here right now. There is a you that is before you even know yourself to be you. There is a you that is before what you're perceiving. There is a you that is eternal. And that is what Taoism is pointing to. One of the ways to know it is in silence. And we'll return to this later in this talk. But I right now want to point to that place in you, the place that is hearing me talk. This is the activity of the Tao itself, this listening that you're doing. It is the Tao in you. You can approach it in silence. So I ask you, as this talk is going on, to treat it as an experiment. And notice the ways in which you seek to distract yourself from the silence, or find yourself distracted. Somebody making noise, or some attractive thought, or some unattractive thought. Those are ways of going away from the silence. Pay attention to the silence that's in you. Taoism is about this state of mind. The state of mind that comes into being when we no longer rely on our thoughts and opinions. The state of mind that is there all the time. Taoism, by the way, doesn't have any, well, it does. It has many formal institutions. But Taoism is basically this collection of practices that has gone on since the 6th century BC. And I'll just give you a hint right now. There is no way to know if somebody's a Taoist or not. In fact, Taoists use this phrase, whoever calls themselves a Taoist is a Taoist. So I hereby ordain you as Taoists. So the question becomes for us, how do we move into that place of being in contact with the Tao? Because until we do, we are constantly living outside of ourselves. The Tao Te Ching says a very interesting, has many powerful statements that it makes. Many of them you'll recognize. This is one that you probably have heard. Those who know do not speak. Those who speak do not know. That's Taoism. That's right out of the Tao Te Ching. As well, you probably will hear things like, well, you probably haven't heard this one. But Taoism teaches this rather radical sense of not doing. And this not doing is very important understanding. Indeed, I think the first thing that got me interested in Taoism was it says you've got to stop doing things with an intention to accomplish something. You've got to learn how to just allow things to happen. So, and at the same time, participate in them. So the phrase that I liked was really, that got me was, doing nothing is better than being busy doing nothing. And so, you know, Taoism really does come up with these zingers. So I'm just inviting you to look at it and see what it is that it wants, what it has to say to you. In fact, my main source, by the way, I'll be honest with you, for Taoism is a book called Taoism for Dummies. And it actually is very good. It's really well written. It's quite a great summary of the whole tradition. And I recommend it highly. I don't recommend Taoism for the Complete Idiot. That's out there too, right? It's not really as good at all. So it's Taoism for Dummies. But the Taoist, the guy who wrote that book, the professor who wrote that book, came to this conclusion when he was talking about doing nothing. He said, what Taoism teaches is that there's no problem anywhere, ethical, social, governmental, or whatever, that's so big that it can't be solved by doing absolutely nothing. So what is this about? Is it saying to just sit there in your room or on the couch, watching? No. It's saying you have to learn to operate without. You have to learn to act without intention, without agenda, without keeping score, without any idea of the result. One learns to act just as a movement of the Tao. And that's where this idea of forgetting comes in. Because forgetting continuously refers to, like, forgetting what I think I know, forgetting my opinions, forgetting my beliefs, forgetting that I'm even male or female, human. We're pointing to a state of consciousness that I'm talking about that's going on right now. And Taoism's way to it is through this unlearning, this forgetting. But Taoism says this: you don't learn through study, you don't learn through doing, you learn through becoming quiet and listening. You learn through what we call in science of mind intuition. A Taoist and priest gave these words to a Western Taoist student: don't try to understand the Tao Te Ching by juggling the words and meanings, but do it intuitively through your heart and spirit. Intuition is, as Ernest Holmes says, the way that God speaks to us. And God speaks to us not in a language like French or English, not with a language with a tongue, but in that universal language of spiritual emotion, which is instinctive in all humanity. The universal language of emotion, sense, feeling, intuition, instinct. It makes no difference what we call it. It is a direct revelation of God through us. We are to enter into direct knowing of the Tao. We do that by dropping any ideas or thoughts about it, and we begin to listen in the stillness, in the quiet, to allow that intuition to appear in us. So sitting together in silence is not simply, as one writer said, the absence. Silence is not simply the absence of sound. It is to be concerned with attention and awareness. Silence and awareness are in fact one thing. Silence has no opposite. Its embrace is wide enough to receive all, both sound and the absence of sound. The practice of contemplation gradually reveals the silent presence flowing through the mud and reeds and rushes of both noise and sound. The measure of our ability to live in silence is our reaction to noise, whether external or internal, and not the length of time we go without hearing anything or hearing only what we like to hear. So it doesn't matter what the sounds are. It's about returning to that silence. I'd like to suggest that we enter the Taoist mode of practice further by doing a meditation together. And in it, I'm going to use a phrase from the Bible, which is very relevant to this. The phrase is, "Be still and know that I am God." So if you'll just follow along with me just a bit. Just sit in silence. Again, looking for the silence in you. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I. Be still and know that. Be still and know. Be still and. Be still. Be. In this moment, you are aware of your home, your true being. You are at home. And from here, you'll understand this from the Tao Te Ching. There is no need to run outside for better seeing, nor to peer from a window. Rather, abide at the center of your being. The more you leave it, the less you learn. Search your heart and see. For if she is wise who takes each turn, the way to do is to be. In this moment of attentive awareness, I speak this word. I accept that each person in this room is the visible, living presence of the One. That the one being that is the source of all beings has right now come into form as each person here, as all of us here. And therefore we are its chosen form of expression. We are the way it is knowing and loving its life. I speak this word now in the awareness of who it is that is hearing it, who it is that is speaking it. For every action is the action of the Tao, and it is heard by the Tao, it is heard by the One. And I accept that each one here knows and finds a deeper connection to that which they are in this moment and in every moment. And in that connection, they realize they are never alone. That this Tao with which they are now in contact holds them like a mother holds a child. It is this glorious vision that I give thanks for. And I release this word now, knowing that as I do so, it manifests perfectly through and as everyone here. And so it is.